The interstellar station floated like a silver shard against the black of space, its sleek hull reflecting distant stars. Within its corridors, the usual hum of machinery and chatter of travelers masked the tension that had been growing for days. Humans and aliens of countless species moved about, some in haste, some curious, unaware that the calm was about to shatter. Among them, Kale, a human security contractor, moved quietly, his hands lightly resting on the weapons at his side. He was not a hero, not by training, only by circumstance, and sometimes that was enough. Kale had spent years on stations like this, protecting shipments, escorting diplomats, and occasionally breaking up fights between species who considered themselves rivals. He had learned that danger often arrived without warning, and that the smallest act could become the most important. He had also learned to avoid getting involved in royal affairs. The last time he ended up with a scar across his cheek and 3 weeks of unwanted attention from an alien court that had more etiquette than sense. But that was before this day, before the corridors filled with the echoes of something far worse. The alarms blared suddenly, shrill and impossible to ignore. Red lights flashed across every surface, reflecting off the polished steel walls. Travelers froze, unsure where to run. Kale didn't hesitate. His instincts told him to move toward the sound, to find the danger and assess it. What he found was chaos. A group of heavily armed alien mercenaries had stormed the station, cutting down guards and bystanders alike. They moved with precision, as if trained for this very moment, and their weapons painted streaks of blue fire across the corridors. The air was thick with smoke, dust, and the scent of fear. Kale ducked behind a support pillar, scanning for movement. His eyes caught a small figure trying to escape, an alien child, no older than 7, with wide amber eyes and hair that shimmered silver in the emergency lights. The child stumbled, tripping over the polished floor, and a mercenary raised its plasma rifle. Time slowed in Kale's mind. He saw the flash of the weapon, the inevitable strike aimed at the child. Without thinking, without hesitation, Kale launched himself forward. He collided with the child, throwing his body between her and the weapon. Pain exploded across his chest as plasma fire seared through his armor. He gritted his teeth, forcing himself to stay down to shield the small life in front of him. The child cried out, a small sound lost amid the cacophony, but Kale could feel her trembling against him. He could not let her die, not like this, not for anything. He rolled to the side, taking another hit across his shoulder, and managed to drag the child behind a stack of cargo crates. Kale's breaths were harsh and rapid, but his mind remained clear. The child's survival was all that mattered. Through the smoke, he caught sight of the attackers moving closer, scanning for survivors, and he realized the terrible truth. He could not hold them off for long, but he could buy her seconds. Every second counted. The child looked up at him with eyes wide and trusting. I'm scared," she whispered. Her voice was trembling, but there was no time to comfort her. Kale shook his head slightly, forcing a small smile. I know, but you're going to be fine. Just stay close." He gripped her small hand with one of his own, feeling how fragile she was, and made a silent promise to her that he intended to keep. The first wave of mercenaries passed the crates, scanning the corridor for any survivors. Kale pressed himself flat against the cold floor, counting each of them. He had faced dangerous situations before, but never like this, never with a child's life hanging in the balance. Every muscle ached, every nerve screamed, but he did not allow fear to take over. He could not yet. He remembered the stories of human soldiers, of the courage his species was capable of even in impossible situations. That courage was not in super strength or advanced weapons, but in choice. Humans could choose to act when logic suggested retreat. Humans could choose to protect, even when it was dangerous, even when survival seemed unlikely. Kale understood that instinctively. That choice was alive in him now as he held the child close, keeping her body pressed to his as best he could. The corridor shook as a heavy weapon discharged somewhere nearby, sending sparks flying across the walls. A panel above Kale's head burst into flames. The child whimpered, clutching at his arm. It's okay, Kale said, his voice steady despite the pain. We just need to get to cover. That's all, just cover. He inched toward the nearest maintenance hatch, pulling the child with him. Every step was agony, every movement a test of endurance. The world seemed to shrink down to the small life in his arms and his own desperate will to survive. As he moved, Kale glimpsed another human lying unconscious in a pool of coolant. He wanted to help, wanted to reach out, but he couldn't risk it. There was no time. Every second spent hesitating was a second closer to the child's death. He forced himself to push forward, ignoring the burn of plasma on his shoulder and the sting across his ribs. His body screamed for him to stop, but he refused to listen. Humans had a saying, "Courage is not the absence of fear. It is the decision to act despite it." Kale embodied that saying now. Finally, they reached a narrow maintenance passage, hidden from immediate view. Kale collapsed against the wall, dragging the child behind him. She huddled close, her small body shaking. He looked down at her, trying to offer reassurance. "You're safe for now." "Just for now," he whispered, though he wasn't certain if even that was true. Every sound in the station, every echo of footsteps, reminded him that danger was still present. He had not defeated it. He had merely delayed it. Kale's mind raced. He had to find a way out, a route that would take them away from the mercenaries and toward safety. He had seen the station's schematics before. The maintenance passages led to the central elevator hub. If he could reach it, they might escape. But the corridors were patrolled, and the child's safety depended on his speed and awareness. He had to calculate every move, every possibility without faltering. Every wrong step could cost her life. As he considered the next move, the child spoke again, her voice barely audible. Why did you save me?" Kale looked down, meeting her wide, innocent eyes. Her question was simple, yet it carried the weight of everything that had happened. Kale hesitated. How could he explain instinct? How could he explain humanity's strange, stubborn need to protect others, even strangers? He could only offer what he knew. "Because it's the right thing to do," he said finally. "Because no one should have to die if I can help it." She seemed to understand, if only in part, and she squeezed his hand tightly. They moved again, slowly and carefully. Kale led the child through narrow maintenance tunnels, avoiding patrols and scanning for the safest route. His body protested every movement, every step, but he ignored the pain. Survival was not just physical, it was determination, focus, and the refusal to give up. Kale had survived worse. He could survive this, and if he failed, the child would not. That was the thought that drove him onward. Eventually, the tunnels led them to a service elevator. Kale pried the panel open and checked the shaft. Clear, he lifted the child into the elevator, pressing the button for the top level. The metallic hum of the lift filled the space, a brief respite from the chaos outside. Kale leaned against the wall, blood dripping from shallow cuts and burns, and allowed himself a moment of rest. The child's small hand rested against his chest, and he could feel her heartbeat. It was steady. It was alive. And that was enough for now. When the elevator doors opened, the station's upper corridors appeared, less damaged than the lower levels, but still dangerous. Kale led the child cautiously forward. He could see the silhouettes of more attackers, but they had moved on for now, distracted by other chaos. Every step was calculated. Every movement carried weight. Kale had one goal: keep the child alive. Everything else was secondary. They reached a safe chamber near the station's medical wing. Kale activated the security lock, isolating them from immediate danger. The child collapsed onto the floor, exhausted, her breaths coming in shallow gasps. Kale knelt beside her, pressing his hand to her shoulder. "You're going to be okay," he said softly, even as his own body threatened to fail. "I promise." That choice was human, and in a galaxy that often valued power above all else, it was remarkable. As the station's alarms continued in the distance, Kale realized that nothing would ever be the same. He had saved the child, but the consequences of his action had only just begun. Somewhere in the heart of a powerful alien empire, eyes would be watching. And when they realized who had protected their heir, the world around him would shift in ways he could not yet imagine. But for now, he simply held the child close, listening to her slow, steady breathing, knowing that in this small moment, humanity had won a quiet, essential victory. Kale had not slept. The child in his care, small and trembling, had drifted into a fitful sleep, but he remained alert. Every sound in the medical chamber, every creak of metal, every distant echo set his nerves on edge. The station, though temporarily quiet, was far from safe. He knew that the attackers might still be moving through other sections, searching for survivors. But beyond the immediate danger, a new threat loomed: the attention of the child's family. And in this galaxy, attention from royalty was rarely neutral. When the door slid open, he tensed instinctively. Two figures entered, their armor and demeanor unmistakable, elite royal guards. They moved with grace, silent but authoritative. Kale did not resist, though his hand instinctively hovered near his weapon. He could see the child stir, sensing the new presence. The smaller figure clutched at his arm, half asleep, half awake. Kale knelt beside her, placing himself between the child and the guards. "Do not harm her," Kale said, his voice steady, even as his body ached from the wounds he had taken. The guards paused, exchanging a glance, then one of them raised a hand in a gesture of authority. "We do not intend to," he said in a smooth, measured tone. "But the child must come with us. It is for her protection." He slowly released the child's hand, but kept his body positioned between her and the guards. "She's been through enough," he said. "She needs medical attention, rest, not whatever it is you're planning." "I'm not leaving her, not yet. She needs me. She's a child." The guard's eyes softened for the briefest moment, but he spoke again with firm authority. "You underestimate the consequences. If you continue, you put yourself and her at risk. She is the daughter of the queen." Their empire was vast, their power absolute. But he had not realized this child was royalty, not just any royalty, the daughter of the queen herself. He swallowed hard. That changed everything. And yet somehow it did not change his decision. She was still a child, and she was still in danger. He would not abandon her, regardless of politics, power, or consequences. The guards spoke again, their tone a mixture of authority and caution. "The queen will want to see you. You must answer for your actions." Cale felt a flicker of fear, but it was tempered by resolve. He had acted out of instinct, not ambition. "I have nothing to answer for," he said simply. "I saved her life. But you will accompany us. The queen must determine your fate. Resistance is inadvisable." "I won't let anything happen to you." He realized with a mixture of awe and unease that the child's presence, his protection of her, had already become known. The story had spread faster than he imagined. Finally, they reached the royal chambers. The door opened to reveal a large room, spacious and decorated with symbols of authority and power. At the far end, seated upon a raised platform, was the queen. Her presence was commanding, her posture regal. She had eyes that seemed to pierce through walls and walls of deception. Cale instinctively straightened, though he was still battered and weary. He had faced countless dangers in his life, but never a presence like this. The child stirred, sensing the weight of the room. Cale held her close, whispering reassurance. "It's okay," he murmured. "I'm still here. Nothing can touch you while I'm with you." The queen's gaze softened briefly at the sight, though her voice remained firm. "You saved her," she said. Her tone carried both authority and curiosity. "Tell me why. Why would a human risk his life for my daughter, a being he did not know?" "Because it was the right thing to do," he said finally, his voice steady. "Because no one should have to die if I can prevent it. She's a child. That's enough reason. Your species is remarkable. You value life in ways my people do not. And yet you risked yours for one so small. That is unexpected. Your instinct is fascinating. Among my people, such selflessness is rare. Survival is everything. Sacrifice is discouraged, yet you chose it willingly." "Why?" Cale shrugged, unsure how to explain something so innate. "Because sometimes you have to, because humans we can choose. Even when it's dangerous, even when it's hard, we can choose to do what's right. Allies and enemies alike will watch you now. Your species has a capacity for disruption that we have only begun to recognize." And the queen, she was trying to understand him. "Your wounds," the queen said finally, gesturing to the medical attendants. "They must be treated. You risked much. You deserve care even if you do not belong here." Cale shook his head. "I'm fine," he said, though his voice betrayed him. The queen's eyes narrowed. "Do not lie." "That is also human, I see." She smiled faintly, a gesture of approval or amusement. Cale did not know which. As the attendants worked to stabilize him, Cale stayed close to the child. She looked up at him with trust and relief, and he felt something he had not expected, a quiet, unspoken bond. He had protected her in a corridor filled with fire and death, and now, despite the vast power of her family, he could still offer her safety. That realization strengthened him. He had acted instinctively before, but now he understood the true weight of his choices. Every action could ripple across galaxies. Hours passed. The child slept peacefully, finally able to rest, while Cale remained alert, observing the flow of the chamber. The queen returned several times, watching him, asking questions, challenging him in subtle ways. She seemed fascinated not by his physical ability, but by his resolve, his instinct, his moral compass. Cale answered each query honestly, aware that deception would be fatal. At one point, she spoke quietly, almost to herself, though Cale could hear. "He is unlike anything we have encountered, perhaps even unlike humans elsewhere. His courage is dangerous, but also necessary." Cale felt a shiver. The words were ambiguous. Was he to be rewarded or punished? Was he a threat or a boon? In this galaxy, sometimes the line between hero and target was razor-thin. As night fell over the station, the queen left the chamber, leaving Cale alone with the child. He allowed himself to lean back against the wall, exhaustion finally washing over him. His muscles ached, his body throbbed, but his mind was alive with realization. He had acted without thought, without strategy, and yet he had altered the course of events simply by choosing to protect a child. And somewhere far above the stars, the Queen considered what that meant for her empire. Humanity, Kale realized, had already begun to make its mark. The next day, Kale was brought before the royal court. The chamber was vast, with walls of polished crystal reflecting the pale light of distant stars. Hundreds of alien delegates, nobles, and military officers had gathered, their eyes focused on him. Every glance carried judgment, curiosity, or suspicion. Kale felt the weight of 1,000 unspoken questions pressing down on him, yet he did not bow. He did not try to appear smaller or weaker. He was a human, and humans did not hide from responsibility. The child, now awake, sat beside the Queen on a raised platform. She clutched a small pendant in her hand, fidgeting with it, yet her eyes never left Kale. There was trust there, simple and absolute, and it gave him courage. He had protected her once, and he would continue to do so. Nothing else mattered. The Queen rose, her presence commanding absolute silence. "We are gathered here to address an event that has already shocked this station and my empire," she said, her voice carrying authority and calm alike. "A human, by the name of Kale, has acted in a way that defies expectation, logic, and the very rules of survival that govern this galaxy. He protected my daughter at the cost of his own life. For that, we are here to understand him." A tall alien noble stepped forward, his scales glinting under the light. "Queen," he said, "while his actions are noted, we cannot ignore that he is a human, a species known for unpredictability and recklessness. He may have saved the child, yes, but how do we know this is not a calculated attempt to manipulate our empire?" Kale's jaw tightened. He could sense the skepticism, the disbelief, and the subtle contempt in the noble's voice. He had faced suspicion before, but now it carried far more consequence than he had ever encountered. Kale's voice was steady, clear, and firm. "I did not know who she was. I did not plan anything. I acted instinctively. I did not think about consequences or power or politics. I saw a child in danger and I protected her. That is all." His words echoed through the chamber. Silence followed. For a moment, even the murmurs stopped. The Queen's eyes softened slightly and she gestured for him to continue. "Explain this instinct you speak of," she said. "How does your species choose to act when logic and survival suggest otherwise?" Kale took a deep breath. He had spoken of instinct before, but never under such scrutiny. "Humans," he said, "we can choose. We can choose to help, to protect, even when it is dangerous. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is acting despite fear. That is what I did. I saw a child in danger and I chose to protect her, even knowing the risk." Among their species, survival was law. Sacrifice for another was considered weakness. And yet here was a human, wounded, battered, and unarmed, who had done exactly that. The concept was foreign, alien, unsettling. The Queen spoke again, her tone measured. "Your species, you value life in ways we do not, and yet that choice carries consequences that ripple farther than you imagine. For this act, you have drawn attention. Some of it is favorable, some dangerous. The court will decide whether your actions are to be celebrated or constrained." She paused, letting the weight of her words settle. "But know this, your instinct, your humanity, has already made an impression that cannot be ignored." "Your Majesty," he said, "if we allow this human to remain near the royal family, it could create unrest. Other species may see him as a symbol of something unpredictable. Loyalty beyond reason. They may fear it or worse, emulate it. Is that wise?" Kale looked at him, unflinching. "I am not a symbol," he said calmly. "I am a man. I acted because it was right, nothing more, nothing less. If others see that and follow, then let them. Maybe that is what the galaxy needs. Your survival instincts are admirable, but do they extend beyond a single moment? Can you think strategically, plan ahead when lives depend on it?" Kale nodded. "I can, but planning and strategy cannot replace instinct. They cannot replace the decision to act when someone is in danger. Sometimes you act first, think later, and hope your choice was right. That is what I did. My advisors are wary, and I must consider the implications." "How do we contain such an influence without destroying it?" Kale frowned slightly. "You don't contain it. You allow it to exist. You learn from it. That is what makes humans strong. That is what allows us to survive where others fail. We must observe, test, and ensure that your presence does not destabilize the court or the child's safety. We cannot afford mistakes." Kale inclined his head. "I understand. I will do whatever is necessary to keep her safe. That is all that matters. Kale, you have acted in a way that no one could have predicted. You have protected my daughter at great personal cost. You have shown qualities that are extraordinary. For that, you will remain under my observation. You will not leave this station. But know this, you are not a prisoner. You are a witness to what humanity can do, and perhaps something more. He did not fully understand her meaning, but he did not question it. He only nodded, determined to honor the trust she had placed, implicitly or explicitly, in him. The child watched him with wide eyes. She reached out, touching his hand, her small gesture speaking volumes. He squeezed her hand gently, offering reassurance. She was alive, safe, and for now that was enough. The court adjourned for a private session, leaving Kale to recover and reflect. He knew that the political stakes were immense. The Queen's advisors would not rest until they understood him fully. Every action he took would be scrutinized, every choice analyzed. But he also knew something else. Humans had survived countless impossible situations, and Kale believed that instinct, courage, and choice were often more powerful than any weapon, any technology, or any law. As he tended to his wounds, Kale thought about what had led him here. He had acted without planning, without expectation, without hope of reward. And yet that single act of protection had placed him at the center of a vast, alien empire. He realized something profound. Humanity's greatest strength was not strength itself. It was the willingness to act, to protect, to choose, even when survival was uncertain. That was the lesson he carried forward. The hours passed, and the child slept peacefully once again, oblivious to the complex politics swirling around her. Kale remained alert, watching, listening, thinking. He could feel the eyes of the court, the shadow of the Queen's scrutiny, the weight of responsibility pressing on him, yet he was not afraid. Fear was natural, but it did not define humans. Choice did, courage did, action did. When the Queen returned to the chamber late that night, she did not speak immediately. She observed Kale quietly, her expression thoughtful. Finally, she said, "You have survived this day not because of strength, not because of luck, but because of your choice. That is remarkable, and it is dangerous." Kale met her gaze steadily. "I will continue to act that way," he said. "I will do what is right, no matter the risk. But I will not fail her." Yet Kale was human, and humans had a way of rising to challenges that seemed impossible. He had saved the child once. He would do so again. And whatever the court decided, whatever the Queen planned, one thing was certain. Humanity had already begun to make its mark on this galaxy. The station had grown quiet again, but Kale knew it was a fragile piece. Outside the walls, the galaxy churned with politics, war, and ambitions that had nothing to do with him. But now everything seemed to involve him. The Queen had allowed him to remain, but it was not freedom. Observation and scrutiny shadowed every step he took. His wounds had healed somewhat, but the tension in his muscles and the ache in his chest reminded him that his ordeal was far from over. The child, now fully awake, followed him everywhere. She was small, delicate, yet remarkably aware of her surroundings. She did not speak much, but her eyes held questions, trust, and the faint flicker of fear that refused to leave entirely. Kale had learned to read her emotions, anticipating her reactions before she even voiced them. In a galaxy where survival was often measured in numbers, instincts, and firepower, Kale's greatest weapon remained his ability to understand and protect her. The Queen summoned him to her chambers again, and this time, Kale felt the weight of expectation even before he entered. The hallway was lined with attendants, advisors, and guards, each nodding or bowing as he passed. His human demeanor, the calm, upright posture, the steady gaze, was alien to them. Kale understood why. Humans rarely acted with deliberate courage without immediate reward, yet he had done so instinctively. That instinct had drawn him to the center of a political storm he barely understood. When he entered, the Queen was already waiting. She stood by the window looking out over the station, her expression contemplative. "Kale," she said, her voice low, measured. "You have spent time among my people. You have seen their rules, their fears, their suspicions. Do you understand the danger you now face?" Kale nodded slowly. "I understand, but I also understand what I am capable of. I will not let the child be harmed. That is my choice. And that is why you must remain here under observation until we determine the implications of your presence. Not physically, but politically, morally. If you succeed, you will prove that humanity is capable of qualities my empire has only theorized. If you fail, well, then the consequences will be severe." They involved minds, loyalties, and the complex web of an empire that valued control above all else. But Kale had learned that humans excelled in situations where intuition, courage, and choice mattered more than brute strength. The next challenge came sooner than he expected. A messenger arrived, announcing that rival factions within the court had requested an audience. Kale was to answer their questions, clarify his intentions, and demonstrate his value. The room where he was led was smaller than the main court, but no less intimidating. Several alien nobles, officers, and scholars were already present, their eyes sharp and calculating. Kale could feel their doubt, suspicion, and curiosity in equal measure. The first to speak was a tall, armored officer. "Human," he said, his tone firm, "you have survived the attack, yes. You have protected the child, yes. But tell us, why should we trust you beyond this single act? How do we know you will not act against us, against the Empire, when it suits your species?" Kale considered his words carefully. "I do not act for personal gain," he said. "I act because it is right. That is what my species does when faced with immediate danger to someone who cannot protect themselves. If that is a threat to you, then you misunderstand humans. We are loyal not because we are commanded to be, but because we choose to be. Among many species, loyalty and action are dictated by survival instinct or law. You choose altruism over self-preservation." Kale nodded. "Yes, that is what I did. I chose to act knowing the risk to myself. I will continue to make that choice when lives are at stake. That is my nature. That is humanity." Others seemed intrigued, even impressed. One elder, his face lined with age and experience, spoke slowly. "And yet your choice carries consequences. By acting against risk, you have set yourself as an example. Others may emulate you. That could destabilize authority. Are you aware of the power your instincts carry?" Kale's eyes narrowed slightly. "I do not seek power, I seek to protect. But if my actions inspire others to protect rather than destroy, then that is a good outcome. Humanity thrives on cooperation, on courage, on choosing right over easy. That is what you see now." Kale's words carried weight because they were simple, honest, and undeniable. That alone unsettled them. The Queen entered the chamber at that moment, and the room fell silent. "Kale," she said, her voice resonant, "you have demonstrated not only courage but also understanding. Your instincts are human, yes, but your ability to articulate them, to act under pressure, shows that you are more than a mere anomaly. You are a testament to what my empire has yet to understand about your species. That is why I claim you." "I don't understand." The Queen's gaze was steady, unwavering. "By ancient law," she said, "an individual who acts to protect the heir of the throne may be bound to the royal household, not as a prisoner, not as a servant, but as one who shares responsibility for the heir's safety. From this moment, Kale, you are bound to my family. You will remain close to the child, protect her, and act according to your instincts and skills. You do not leave, you do not disobey, but you are free in every other sense." But one thing was clear. He had earned a position of importance not through power, not through diplomacy, not through wealth, but through instinct, courage, and choice. Humanity had triumphed in a way no weapon or strategy could have accomplished. The child, now fully awake, looked at Kale with wide eyes. She reached for his hand, as if confirming the bond that had been recognized by law and decree. Kale squeezed her hand gently. He would protect her no matter what. That was his choice, and no court, no law, no empire could change that. Over the following days, Kale began his new life. The station shifted around him. Guards, attendants, and courtiers all observed him, aware that he was no ordinary human. He trained with the child, taught her small skills in awareness, caution, and observation. Not because he wanted to indoctrinate her, but because he wanted her to survive, to be strong, and to understand that courage came in many forms. Meanwhile, the Queen continued to study him, not just his actions, but his thoughts, his decisions, his ability to remain calm under pressure. Kale noticed that she did not test him with weapons or combat. She tested him with words, with politics, with moral dilemmas. Each test revealed more about him, and more about what humans could accomplish. One evening, Kale found himself alone with the child in a quiet courtyard of the station. The stars stretched endlessly above them, cold and distant, yet beautiful. She looked up at him, small fingers clutching a pendant she had not let go since the attack. "Kale," she said softly, "will they hurt me again?" "No one will hurt you, I promise. I will protect you just like before, and I will make sure that everyone who wants to harm you regrets it." The child nodded, leaning against him. There was trust, but also understanding. She knew instinctively that humans acted differently, that Kale's courage was not just strength, but choice. Across the station, whispers of his actions and the Queen's decree began to spread. Other species, other factions, even other humans on nearby stations began to notice. The human who acted on instinct, the human who defied expectation, the human who protected royalty at his own cost, Kale had become more than himself. He had become a symbol, a living example of humanity's power, resilience, and unpredictable strength. Kale understood that this was only the beginning. The galaxy would not be gentle. Political rivals, jealous factions, and those who misunderstood human choice would test him again. But he was ready. Humanity had survived impossible odds before. And he would continue to act, to protect, and to demonstrate the power of instinct and courage in ways no one had anticipated. As night fell over the station, Kale looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, threats waited, challenges emerged, and dangers lurked. But Kale was no longer just a survivor. He was a human bound to protect a royal child, and through that bond he had become something extraordinary. The Queen's decree had changed everything, but the choice remained his. Humanity would continue to shine, even in the shadow of an empire, because Kale had chosen to act. And that choice was unstoppable. The station was alive with activity, though tension ran like an invisible current through its corridors. Kale had learned to move through it with awareness, understanding that even the smallest misstep could draw attention. But now he was not just a protector of a child. He was the human who had survived attacks, politics, and the scrutiny of a powerful empire. And that meant the galaxy was watching. The child, now growing more confident each day, had begun to rely on Kale in ways that went beyond instinctual trust. She listened when he spoke of danger, followed his instructions in simulations, and learned to observe the world carefully. Yet, Kale could see that the child's young mind could not fully grasp the threats surrounding her. He would have to remain vigilant, ready to act before others could even comprehend the danger. It was during a routine inspection of the station's outer perimeter that Kale first sensed the approaching challenge. The Queen had summoned him privately, her face serious, her gaze unwavering. "Kale," she said, "you have proven your instinct, courage, and judgment. But a test is coming, a challenge that will require every skill, every decision, every ounce of humanity you have shown. You must prove that humanity can shape destiny, not merely survive it." They were mercenaries, rogue forces from a rival system, intent on striking at the Queen's family and destabilizing her empire. Kale felt the familiar pulse of fear, but he did not allow it to control him. He had acted in far worse situations, and he had survived because he trusted his instincts and chose action over hesitation. The child clung to him as they moved through the corridors. "Kale, are they going to hurt us?" she asked, her voice small but steady. He knelt to meet her gaze, holding her shoulders firmly. "No, not if I can stop them. We move fast, we stay calm, and we act together. You trust me?" She nodded, eyes wide. "I trust you." Through the large viewing panels, Kale could see the enemy ships forming attack patterns. Their speed and coordination were impressive, but they were also predictable in ways he could exploit. Kale took a deep breath and formulated a plan. It would rely not on superior firepower, but on timing, awareness, and the human ability to act decisively in a chaotic situation. He instructed the station crew to activate diversionary protocols, sending decoy signals and cloaking smaller cargo pods to confuse the attackers. He moved the child to a secure chamber, ensuring she would be protected no matter what happened. Then, armed with only his standard equipment and his instincts, he took position near the station's main control console. The first strike came as a sudden pulse of energy against the hull. Sparks erupted, alarms screamed, and the station shook. Kale assessed the trajectory and noticed a flaw. The attackers were relying on automated targeting systems, unaware that human intuition could anticipate patterns their machines could not. He calculated the angle, the timing, and the best countermeasure. Then he acted. He manually diverted the station's defense drones, creating an illusion of multiple targets. The attackers fired, their weapons hitting empty space. Kale moved quickly, adjusting the drones and using the station's corridors as a funnel, guiding the enemy ships into a trap. Every movement was calculated, every choice critical. One mistake could cost countless lives, including the child's. Through it all, Kale remained calm, his human instincts guiding him. He did not hesitate, did not second-guess. He acted and the attackers faltered. Their fleet became confused, disorganized, vulnerable. Kale seized the moment, launching countermeasures that disabled the lead ship, which in turn caused chaos among the remaining vessels. Within minutes, the threat was neutralized. The station's alarms fell silent. The crew exhaled in relief, their eyes wide as they realized what had just happened. Kale stood in the command center, exhausted but composed. He had acted not because he sought glory, but because he had chosen to act in defense of life, instinctively, decisively, and without hesitation. Humanity had prevailed once again, not with overwhelming force, but with courage and choice. The Queen arrived moments later, accompanied by senior officials. She surveyed the aftermath, her expression one of measured awe. "Kale," she said, her voice calm but firm, "you have demonstrated not only courage but intelligence, judgment, and decisive action. Your instincts have saved countless lives today, including my daughter's. Your humanity is a force unlike any other." Together, courage, instinct, choice, and strategic thinking, all demonstrated under extreme pressure. Today, humanity has shown the Empire a path we have not seen before. You do not need to believe it or understand it fully. But know this, when someone is in danger, humans choose to act. That choice is stronger than any weapon. That choice is stronger than fear. The Queen's decision was confirmed. Kale would remain near the royal family, not as a servant, not as a prisoner, but as a protector, a testament to humanity itself. Over the next weeks, Kale helped train the child in awareness, strategy, and observation. He worked with the station's crew to improve defenses, teaching them lessons they had never considered. Not tactics alone, but the value of instinct, choice, and courage. Aliens observed him, puzzled, fascinated, and sometimes unsettled by the quiet power of his human ways. Word of his deeds spread beyond the station, reaching distant systems. Stories of the human who acted against impossible odds, who protected royalty with nothing but instinct and courage, became legend. Other species began to study humans, not merely as laborers or soldiers, but as beings capable of qualities that challenged centuries of expectation. Kale understood this. Humanity had survived impossible odds before. Now it had demonstrated its power in a galaxy that had not yet learned to expect it. One evening, Kale sat with the child in the station's observatory. Stars stretched endlessly above them, cold, distant, and beautiful. "Kale," she said, "will we always be safe?" He smiled gently, resting a hand on her shoulder. "I will do everything I can, but being safe is not just about walls or weapons. It's about courage, awareness, and choosing to protect one another. That is something no one can take from us." That was what made them unstoppable. As the station hummed quietly around them, Kale looked out at the stars and felt the weight of what had been accomplished. The galaxy would continue to challenge him, to test humanity, to push limits beyond imagination. But Kale knew this: wherever there was danger, wherever someone was in need, humans would act. Not because they had to, but because they chose to. And in that choice, they had already begun to change the galaxy. The Queen had claimed him, the child had trusted him, and the Empire had seen the power of a human who acted with courage and instinct. Humanity had arrived, not with fire or destruction, but with the quiet, unyielding force of choice. Kale leaned back, tired but resolute, and allowed himself a rare moment of peace. The child's hand remained in his, small and trusting, and in that simple connection he understood the truth of all his trials. Strength was fleeting, strategy could fail, but the human heart, guided by instinct and choice, was limitless. The galaxy would never be the same. Not because of weapons, not because of politics, but because humans had shown that the most powerful force was the one that could choose to act when no one else would. And Kale had chosen.